Don't miss this. God's plan is hidden in your closed doors. There are moments in life when silence becomes louder than sound, when doors close so suddenly that you don't even hear the lock click, and all you're left with is the echo of what could have been. You replay conversations in your head, you question every decision, and you whisper prayers that feel like they're floating into a ceiling that won't open. You wonder why something you asked God for so sincerely was taken away, why opportunities disappeared right when you were ready, why people walked out just when you thought they were meant to stay. And in those moments, the most dangerous lie begins to form in your mind, the belief that closed doors mean rejection, abandonment, or failure. But what if the very doors that broke your heart are the ones proving that God has not forgotten you at all? What if the silence you're in is not absence, but preparation? What if the delay you hate is the protection you didn't ask for? What if the door that shut in your face wasn't punishment, but precision? Because throughout history, the greatest shifts in purpose never began with open paths and easy answers. They began with interruption, with denial, with loss, with endings that felt cruel in the moment but made perfect sense in hindsight. And yet when you're standing in the middle of your own closed-door season, hindsight offers no comfort. All you feel is confusion, fear, and the quiet terror of not knowing what comes next. This is where faith is tested most brutally, not when miracles are obvious, not when blessings overflow, but when God seems to say nothing while everything falls apart. Because closed doors attack your identity. They make you question your worth. They tempt you to chase after what God already blocked. They pressure you to reopen what heaven intentionally sealed. And if you're not careful, you'll spend years knocking on doors God closed in mercy, begging for access to spaces that would have destroyed you. There is a truth that rarely gets preached because it requires patience instead of hype, surrender instead of control, and trust instead of proof. God often hides His greatest plans inside closed doors because openness too early would expose you to battles you are not yet equipped to fight. Timing is not delay, it is design. And the reason it hurts so much is because growth always feels like loss before it feels like purpose. Think about how many times you asked God to remove something, and when He finally did, you cried instead of celebrated. Think about how many relationships you prayed would work, only to watch them collapse, not realizing that God was protecting your future self from a version of you that would have been diminished, distracted, or destroyed by staying. Think about how many opportunities looked perfect on the surface but would have cost you your peace, your faith, or your calling if they had opened. God does not close doors randomly. He closes them deliberately, strategically, lovingly, even when it doesn't feel loving at all. There is a hidden pattern in how God works. He often closes the door before He reveals the next step because if you saw the full picture too soon, you would try to control it instead of trust Him with it. Certainty kills dependence. And dependence is where transformation happens. When doors close, God is not punishing you, He is refining your hearing. He is teaching you to listen without seeing, to walk without clarity, to believe without evidence. This is why closed doors feel lonely. Because isolation forces introspection. It strips away external validation and leaves you face to face with who you really are and who you are becoming. It exposes motivations. It reveals attachments. It shows you whether you love God for His gifts or trust Him even when the gifts are gone. Closed doors are not just about where you're going, they are about who you're becoming on the way. And here's the part most people never realize until it's too late: the enemy doesn't need to destroy you if he can distract you. He just needs to keep you emotionally tied to doors God has already shut. Regret is one of the most effective prisons because it keeps your body moving forward while your spirit stays stuck in the past. God closes doors not only to move you forward, but to break your addiction to what is familiar but fruitless. You see, not every open door is divine, and not every closed door is denial. Some open doors are tests, and some closed doors are answers to prayers you don't even remember praying. You asked for peace, but peace required separation. You asked for growth, but growth required discomfort. You asked for purpose, but purpose required pruning. And pruning always looks like loss before it looks like life. There are seasons when God will shut every door at once, not because He is cruel, but because He is focusing you. Because when too many doors are open, you divide your energy, your attention, your devotion. A closed season narrows your vision until the only direction left is upward. And in that upward gaze, something shifts. You stop asking why and start asking who you're becoming. You stop begging for explanations and start developing endurance. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating faith. This is why the most powerful transformations happen in hidden seasons. When no one is applauding. When no one understands. When progress is invisible and obedience feels unrewarded. God does His deepest work in the dark because roots grow strongest underground. And roots are never glamorous. They are unseen, dirty, and slow, but without them, nothing above ground survives the storm. If God opened every door you wanted, you would never learn discernment. If He explained every delay, you would never learn trust. If He removed every obstacle, you would never develop resilience. Closed doors teach you how to walk by faith instead of by sight. They teach you how to value timing over impulse. They teach you how to recognize God's voice over your own emotions. And here is the paradox that changes everything: the door you think you need may not be the door God intends to open. Sometimes God closes the door you're knocking on because the real door is behind you, and you're too afraid to turn around. Sometimes He closes a door not to stop you, but to redirect you. Not to limit you, but to launch you. Not to delay you, but to deepen you. When you finally look back years later, you won't thank God for every open door. You'll thank Him for the ones that never opened. For the relationship that didn't last. For the job you didn't get. For the path that ended abruptly. Because you'll realize that what felt like rejection was actually rescue, what felt like silence was actually strategy, and what felt like loss was actually alignment. The closed door is not the end of your story. It is the edit that makes the story worth telling. It is God saying, "Trust me enough to let this go so I can give you something you can't yet imagine." And when the right door finally opens, and it will, you won't have to force it. You won't have to beg. You won't have to compromise who you are. It will open with peace, not panic. With clarity, not confusion. With confirmation, not fear. Until then, don't curse the closed door. Don't rush the process. Don't reopen what God closed. Stand still long enough to realize that sometimes the greatest miracle is not the door that opens, but the one that never did, because it saved your life, shaped your soul, and positioned you for a future far greater than the one you were trying to hold on to. And when you finally step through what God has prepared, you will understand that every closed door was never an ending. It was an instruction. It was a boundary. It was a blessing disguised as a goodbye. And the reason this truth hits so deeply is because somewhere inside you, you already sense it. You already know that some endings felt wrong only because you didn't yet see what they were protecting you from. You already feel that certain doors closed with such force that it couldn't have been coincidence. There was intention in it. Precision in it. A divine firmness that said, "This far, but no further." And even now, as you replay those moments, something inside you recognizes that staying would have slowly erased you. It would have required you to shrink, to compromise, to settle for a version of life that looked acceptable on the outside but felt empty on the inside. Closed doors have a way of exposing the gap between what you want and what you truly need. Desire often speaks loud and fast, while destiny whispers patiently and waits to be chosen. God's plan rarely competes for your attention, it waits for your surrender. And surrender only becomes real when control is removed. That is why doors close without negotiation. Because if God negotiated every step, fear would always bargain its way back in. There are moments when the door closes and your first instinct is to run harder, try more, push deeper, prove your worth. But God is not impressed by force. He is moved by obedience. Some doors are closed not because you weren't good enough, but because you were becoming too dependent on something that could never sustain you. And God loves you too much to let temporary things become permanent idols. This is where the inner battle intensifies. Because when a door closes, you are left alone with your thoughts. And thoughts can either become prayers or prisons. You can let them shape faith or sharpen fear. You can let them refine your vision or distort your identity. Closed doors do not define you, but your response to them does. The same door that makes one person bitter makes another person better. The difference is not circumstance, it is trust. What most people don't realize is that God does not just work through what He gives, He works through what He withholds. Absence can be just as powerful as abundance. Silence can teach more than answers. Delay can prepare more than instant gratification ever could. The waiting season is not wasted time, it is training ground. It is where your character is strengthened quietly, where your motives are purified slowly, where your faith matures deeply. When doors close, God often strips away noise so you can finally hear what has always been there. The distractions fade. The external affirmations disappear. The applause goes quiet. And suddenly, you are forced to confront the one voice that truly matters. That is when alignment begins. Not alignment with people's expectations. Not alignment with timelines you created out of fear. Alignment with purpose. You were never meant to fit into every room you entered. Some rooms were only meant to reveal what you outgrew. Some doors were only meant to teach you discernment. Some endings were only meant to awaken you. And once you understand this, you stop begging for access to spaces that drain you. You stop romanticizing doors that God shut with clarity. You stop confusing familiarity with destiny. The truth is, God sees what you cannot see. He sees conversations that would have changed you. He sees compromises you would have justified. He sees pressures that would have shaped you into someone you were never meant to be. So he closes the door, not to hurt you, but to preserve you. Not to delay your future, but to protect your calling. Not to punish your past, but to secure your becoming. This is why sometimes the door closes after you prayed, after you tried, after you invested everything. Because effort does not equal alignment. And sincerity does not override direction. You can be passionate and still be misplaced. You can be committed and still be misaligned. Closed doors are God's way of correcting direction without destroying momentum. And here is something rarely spoken but deeply true: God closes doors to reposition you emotionally before He repositions you physically. If He moved you too quickly, you would carry old wounds into new seasons. You would repeat cycles in different settings. You would expect the new door to heal what only time and surrender can repair. So God pauses the journey, not to frustrate you, but to restore you. You may not realize it now, but the closed door you're grieving is breaking patterns that ran deeper than you knew. It is dismantling expectations that limited you. It is interrupting generational habits that kept you small. It is forcing you to trust God beyond comfort, beyond familiarity, beyond control. And that kind of trust changes everything. There will come a day when you no longer ache for what ended. Not because you hardened your heart, but because your heart expanded. You grew. You healed. You saw clearly. And you realized that what you were holding onto could never have held you up. That realization does not come overnight. It comes through obedience in obscurity. Through faith in frustration. Through patience when nothing seems to move. And then, quietly, without announcement, a new door begins to appear. Not flashy. Not forced. Not rushed. It doesn't demand that you abandon your values or chase approval. It aligns naturally. It opens without anxiety. It welcomes you without resistance. And when you step through it, you notice something unexpected: you are different. Stronger. Wiser. More grounded. Less desperate. More discerning. That is how you know the closed doors did their work. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start saying, "Thank you for not letting me stay where I was." You stop seeing endings as failures and start recognizing them as redirections. You stop measuring progress by speed and start measuring it by depth. And in that shift, peace replaces panic. The plan was never hidden to confuse you. It was hidden to grow you. God does not reveal everything at once because revelation without readiness becomes pressure. And pressure without maturity breaks people. So He reveals just enough for the next step, just enough for the next act of obedience, just enough to keep you moving forward without losing your dependence on Him. If you are standing in front of a closed door right now, let this truth settle into your spirit: the door is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It is shaping your patience, sharpening your discernment, and strengthening your faith. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are being aligned. And one day, when the door opens that was meant for you, you will not rush through it trying to prove yourself. You will walk through it with peace, knowing that nothing can close what God has opened, and nothing that God closed was ever meant to define you. Because in the end, the closed door was never rejection. It was direction. It was protection. It was preparation. And the plan was there all along, hidden not from you, but for you. And the deeper truth is this: the pain you felt when the door closed was not proof that you were wrong, it was proof that you cared. Only people who invest deeply feel deeply. Only those who hoped sincerely grieve sincerely. And God is not threatened by your grief. He does not rush you through it. He allows you to feel it fully because He knows grief, when surrendered, becomes wisdom. When resisted, it becomes bitterness. And this is why the closed-door season feels so intense. It is a crossroads where your inner life is reshaped. In those moments when nothing makes sense, when prayers feel unanswered and silence stretches longer than you expected, something profound is happening beneath the surface. Your faith is moving from borrowed belief to personal conviction. You are no longer trusting God because things are working out, you are trusting Him because He is God. That shift changes how you walk, how you choose, how you wait. It builds a faith that does not collapse when circumstances change. Most people want God's plan without God's process. They want clarity without patience, blessing without surrender, purpose without pruning. But the process is where the transformation happens. Closed doors are not interruptions to your life, they are invitations to maturity. They are moments where God says, "Let me teach you something you could not learn any other way." You may not realize it yet, but the version of you that existed before the door closed could not have handled what God is preparing next. The responsibility would have crushed you. The visibility would have exposed wounds. The opportunity would have magnified insecurity. So God delays the destination until the foundation is strong enough to carry it. This is not cruelty. This is care. And this is why comparison becomes so dangerous in closed-door seasons. You look around and see others moving forward while you feel stuck. Others celebrating while you are waiting. Others advancing while you are paused. But you do not know what doors they walked through prematurely. You do not know what storms their foundations cannot withstand. God's timing is personal. Your season cannot be measured by someone else's pace. What feels like stagnation is often stabilization. What feels like emptiness is often clearing. God removes before He replaces. He empties before He fills. He closes before He opens. And when He closes a door, He is not asking you to understand, He is asking you to trust. There is a sacred discipline in learning how to wait without losing faith. In learning how to rest without quitting. In learning how to let go without becoming numb. Closed doors teach you how to hope without attachment, how to desire without desperation, how to believe without guarantees. That kind of faith is rare. And rare faith is forged in rare seasons. If God allowed you to see the full picture right now, it would overwhelm you. Not because the plan is small, but because it is bigger than your current capacity to carry it. So He reveals it in pieces. He teaches you step by step. He grows you layer by layer. And each closed door removes something that would have slowed you down later. There is also a sobering reality that many people miss. Some doors close because staying would have eventually required you to disobey God to remain comfortable. Compromise rarely announces itself loudly. It creeps in quietly, disguised as convenience, acceptance, or survival. God closes doors early to prevent compromises later. He protects your integrity even when you don't realize it's under threat. And as time passes, something subtle begins to shift inside you. You stop fighting the closed door. You stop trying to prove your worth to it. You stop knocking. You stop explaining yourself. You stop rehearsing arguments you'll never need. You begin to release. And in that release, your strength returns. Your peace stabilizes. Your identity recenters. This is when you realize that your value was never determined by access. It was never validated by acceptance. It was never proven by opportunity. You were valuable before the door opened, and you remain valuable after it closed. The door did not define you. God does. And here's where hope quietly re-enters the story, not as excitement, not as adrenaline, but as calm assurance. You begin to sense that the waiting is doing something good. That you are becoming more discerning, more grounded, more secure. That you are no longer chasing every open door out of fear of missing out. You are learning to wait for the one that aligns. This is when God begins to shift your desires. What you once begged for no longer excites you. What you once feared losing no longer controls you. What once felt essential now feels optional. And that change is not loss, it is freedom. When the next door opens, it will not open because you forced it. It will open because you are ready. Ready to steward it. Ready to sustain it. Ready to walk through it without losing yourself. Ready to receive it without idolizing it. Ready to move forward without dragging the past behind you. And when that moment comes, you will look back, not with regret, but with gratitude. Gratitude for the doors that closed when you were too emotional to see clearly. Gratitude for the delays that saved you from rushing into things that would have cost you more than they gave. Gratitude for the silence that taught you to listen. Because the truth is, God was never withholding from you. He was guarding you. He was shaping you. He was preparing you for a life that fits, not just your dreams, but your calling. So if you are still standing in front of a closed door today, take heart. This is not the end. This is not failure. This is not punishment. This is formation. This is alignment. This is God doing His quiet, invisible work, the kind that changes everything. And one day, you will step into what He has prepared, not rushed, not desperate, not afraid, but steady, rooted, and at peace. And you will understand that the door did not close to stop you. It closed to lead you somewhere far greater. And even after you understand this in your mind, your heart may still struggle to accept it. Because faith is not the absence of questions, it is the decision to trust God even while the questions remain unanswered. There will be days when you feel strong and assured, and days when the weight of uncertainty presses down on you again. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human, walking through a divine process that stretches the soul before it strengthens it. Closed doors often bring buried fears to the surface. Fear of being left behind. Fear of wasting time. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear that maybe you missed your moment. But here is the truth that dismantles all of those fears at once: what is meant for you cannot miss you. Timing does not outrun destiny. Opportunity does not expire when God is involved. The plan is not fragile. It does not collapse because you paused. It does not disappear because you waited. God's purposes are not threatened by your uncertainty. What feels like standing still is often God anchoring you so that when the storm passes, you are not swept away with it. Stability is formed in stillness, not in speed. Roots grow when movement slows. And the deeper the roots, the higher the growth that can be sustained later. This is why some people rise quickly and fall just as fast, while others rise slowly and remain standing. God is far more concerned with endurance than appearance. There is a refining fire in closed-door seasons. It burns away illusions. It strips false confidence. It removes dependency on outcomes. And what remains is something unshakable, identity anchored in God rather than circumstance. That identity cannot be threatened by rejection, delay, or loss. It stands firm even when everything else shifts. You begin to realize that God's plan is not merely about where you end up, but about who you become along the way. If He gave you the destination without the transformation, the destination itself would become a burden. So He works patiently, carefully, lovingly, closing doors that would have shortcut growth and opened wounds you were not yet ready to heal from. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, peace replaces urgency. You stop rushing prayers. You stop forcing timelines. You stop demanding answers on your schedule. You begin to trust that God sees further than you ever could, and that His silence is not absence, but intention. This is where maturity is born. When you can stand in uncertainty without panicking. When you can wait without resenting. When you can let go without becoming bitter. Closed doors teach you how to hold life with open hands instead of clenched fists. And open hands are the only ones that can receive what comes next. You also begin to recognize patterns, how certain doors closed right before you compromised your values, how certain endings saved you from becoming someone you would not have recognized, how certain delays preserved your faith when success too early would have distorted it. What once felt like chaos starts to reveal order. What once felt random starts to reveal design. And then there is gratitude. Not forced gratitude, not performative gratitude, but deep, settled gratitude that comes from understanding. Gratitude for protection disguised as disappointment. Gratitude for redirection disguised as rejection. Gratitude for silence that taught you how to listen. You no longer need every door to open. You only want the right one. And that desire alone shows how much you have grown. When the future finally unfolds, it will not feel like luck. It will feel like alignment. It will feel like peace settling into place. It will feel like recognition rather than surprise. And you will step forward not with fear of losing it, but with confidence that if God gave it, He will sustain it. Until that moment, keep walking. Keep trusting. Keep releasing what God has closed. Because every closed door is shaping you into someone who can walk through the next one with wisdom, humility, and strength. The plan was never lost. It was never delayed. It was never denied. It was unfolding quietly, behind the closed doors you once thought were holding you back, but were actually leading you forward all along. And as this understanding settles deeper, you begin to notice something else that once escaped you. The closed door didn't just stop you from going somewhere, it stopped something from entering you. It blocked influences that would have reshaped your thinking. It prevented voices from redefining your values. It interrupted cycles that would have repeated quietly for years. What you once saw as loss was also a filter. A narrowing. A refining of what was allowed access to your life. There is a sacred clarity that comes when you stop trying to reopen doors God has already closed. The exhaustion fades. The inner conflict quiets. The constant second-guessing loosens its grip. You no longer wake up replaying conversations or rewriting outcomes in your head. You begin to live forward instead of backward. And that shift, subtle as it seems, restores energy you didn't realize you were losing. This is when you discover that peace is not found in answers, but in alignment. Not in knowing what comes next, but in trusting who walks with you now. God's presence becomes more real to you in closed seasons because there is less to distract you from it. When everything else falls silent, His voice becomes clearer, not louder, but steadier. And you start to understand that some doors had to close because they were never meant to carry the weight of your future. They could not sustain the calling on your life. They could not hold the depth you were growing into. Staying would have required you to keep explaining yourself, defending your faith, minimizing your convictions, or constantly proving your worth. God does not call you into spaces where you must shrink to survive. What He prepares next will not require you to abandon who you are. It will not demand that you compromise what you believe. It will not thrive on your anxiety or fear of loss. It will meet you where you are strengthened, not where you are desperate. And that is why the waiting matters so much. Desperation clouds discernment. Peace sharpens it. You may notice now that you are becoming more comfortable with uncertainty. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped panicking. You no longer interpret every delay as danger. You no longer assume every silence means something is wrong. You are learning that God can be trusted even when the path is unclear. That trust becomes the anchor that steadies you when emotions rise and circumstances fluctuate. And this is the hidden gift of closed doors. They teach you how to walk by faith without needing constant reassurance. They teach you how to move forward without applause. They teach you how to obey without immediate reward. This kind of obedience is rare, and it carries a depth of blessing that surface-level success never could. One day, when life finally unfolds in ways you couldn't have planned, you will realize that the closed doors were not detours. They were the route. They were shaping your discernment, refining your patience, strengthening your reliance on God rather than outcomes. They were protecting your future peace long before you knew you would need it. And when you stand in that future, grounded, clear, unshaken, you will see that nothing was wasted. Not the waiting. Not the confusion. Not the disappointment. Not the silence. Every closed door carried purpose. Every delay carried intention. Every ending carried instruction. So keep trusting the God who closes doors with wisdom and opens doors with peace. Keep releasing what no longer opens. Keep walking forward even when the path feels quiet. Because the plan was never hidden to harm you, it was hidden to prepare you. And when the door finally opens that aligns with who you have become, you won't run through it out of fear of losing it. You will walk through it with calm confidence, knowing that what God opens no one can close, and what He closes was never meant to hold you back. It was meant to lead you exactly where you belong. And by now, something within you has softened. Not weakened, softened. The sharp edges of urgency have dulled. The panic that once rushed your prayers has eased into quiet conversation. You are no longer begging God to explain Himself. You are learning to sit with Him in the mystery. And that is not resignation. That is intimacy. Because intimacy is built not when everything makes sense, but when trust remains even when it doesn't. Closed doors teach you how to remain present instead of restless. They teach you how to breathe instead of bracing for impact. They teach you how to let God be God instead of trying to manage outcomes He never asked you to control. You start to realize that the season of closed doors was also a season of protection from becoming someone you were not meant to be. Protection from rushing into identities built on approval. Protection from measuring your worth by productivity. Protection from mistaking motion for progress. God was not slowing you down, He was anchoring you. And in that anchoring, your inner life begins to change. You respond differently to disappointment. You listen more carefully. You speak more thoughtfully. You choose more intentionally. The chaos that once ruled your decisions loses its authority. You are no longer driven by fear of missing out, but guided by peace of alignment. There is a quiet confidence that begins to form in you now. Not the loud confidence that needs validation, but the steady confidence that knows it is held. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself to doors that never opened. You no longer rehearse explanations for endings that no longer matter. You begin to trust that if God removed it, it was because it could not go where He was taking you. And this trust changes how you see the future. You stop fearing it. You stop trying to predict it. You stop forcing it to fit your timeline. Instead, you prepare yourself for it. You grow. You heal. You strengthen your faith. You deepen your character. You become someone who can receive without fear and steward without insecurity. This is where many people miss the miracle. They are so focused on the door that closed that they don't notice the person they are becoming because of it. But the transformation happening inside you is far more significant than the access you lost. You are gaining discernment that will save you later. You are gaining patience that will sustain you later. You are gaining clarity that will guide you later. And when the right moment comes, the door that opens will not feel like chaos. It will feel like confirmation. It will not trigger anxiety, it will settle it. You will not question whether you belong, you will know. Because by then, you will no longer be chasing identity. You will be walking in it. The closed doors did not delay your destiny. They aligned it. They removed detours disguised as opportunities. They stripped distractions disguised as blessings. They cleared the path so that when the time came, you would walk forward unburdened, undivided, and unafraid. And one day, quietly, almost gently, you will realize that the season you once begged to escape was the season that shaped you most. The season that taught you to trust without proof. To wait without bitterness. To let go without losing hope. To believe without seeing. At that moment, gratitude will rise naturally. Not because everything turned out the way you imagined, but because it turned out better than you could have planned. You will see that God's plan was never late. Never careless. Never cruel. It was precise. It was intentional. It was loving, even when it hurt. So if you are still waiting, still trusting, still standing in front of doors that remain closed, let this truth steady your heart. You are not being denied. You are being prepared. You are not being punished. You are being protected. You are not being forgotten. You are being guided. The door will open when you are ready, not just to enter, but to remain. And when it does, you will walk through it with peace, carrying the quiet strength of someone who knows that every closed door along the way was part of the plan all along. And as everything settles into place, there comes a moment of stillness, a moment where you finally stop fighting the past and stop rushing the future. You begin to live fully in the present, grounded in the understanding that God has never lost control, not for a single second. The closed doors did not confuse him. The delays did not surprise him. The silence did not weaken his plan. Every moment was held, measured, and guided with intention far beyond what you could see at the time. You begin to understand that faith was never about having everything explained. It was about learning to walk even when the path dimmed. And now, standing here, you can feel how much stronger you are than when the door first closed. You don't react the same way. You don't fear the same things. You don't cling the same way. Something inside you has matured. Something steady has taken root. And that steady strength will carry you forward into seasons that once would have overwhelmed you. The beauty of God's plan is not just that it leads you somewhere meaningful, but that it shapes you into someone who can handle the place He's taking you to. You were never meant to arrive unchanged. You were meant to arrive refined. Whole. Grounded. Ready. And every closed door was part of that refinement. Every ending was shaping endurance. Every delay was strengthening trust. Every moment of uncertainty was expanding your capacity to believe. If you're listening to this right now and something inside your heart feels seen, if you feel a quiet sense of peace or understanding beginning to rise, let that be a reminder that you are not alone in this journey. Others have stood where you are standing. Others have felt what you have felt. And just like them, you will look back one day and realize that the door didn't close to stop you, it closed to guide you. So don't lose hope. Don't rush the process. Don't reopen what God has closed. Trust the wisdom behind the silence. Trust the love behind the delay. Trust the hand that is guiding you even when you cannot see it. And if this message spoke to you, if it brought clarity, comfort, or renewed faith, take a moment to show your support. Gently tap the like button so this message can reach others who may be standing in front of closed doors of their own. Share this with someone who needs reassurance, someone who feels stuck, someone who needs to be reminded that God is still working behind the scenes. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. This space exists to walk with you through moments of doubt, growth, faith, and transformation. Every video is created to help you learn, reflect, and reconnect with a deeper understanding of God's purpose in everyday life. By subscribing, you become part of a community that seeks meaning, not just motivation, faith, not just feelings. Remember this as you move forward: closed doors are not the end of your story. They are lessons. They are protection. They are preparation. And every season, no matter how confusing, has something to teach you if you're willing to listen. Thank you for spending this time here. May you carry this message with you, may it bring you peace in uncertain moments, and may it remind you that God's plan is always unfolding, even when the door in front of you remains closed.